You've just written a few books, managed a few pieces, in fact, in the post-crisis scenario.
Yeah. First, I want to express my appreciation for this opportunity. I'm honored to be here. And as I see the Indian leadership, it is absolutely very impressive. First, our people in the banking industry, in the regulation area, have done an outstanding job. We were really not that badly affected. Our people have been thinking, acting out of time. The Reserve Bank did a fantastic job. The government did a great job. Our people are looking at the businesses outside India. This morning, if you read the Economic Times, how Mr. Birla, Kumar Mangalam Birla, and his people bought this company, Novalis, and be able to turn it around, and fantastic job. So we always had great executives in this nation.
But are they actually turning those around for the future? We've had great executives, figureheads. We've been seeing them as part of heads of family businesses for many years. Do you see that this is actually passing the baton to the next stage?
Yeah, I have no doubt in my mind that when I looked at this morning on the Novalis thing, it's real. The person who runs Novalis in Atlanta, I've known him for a long time, so I connected that. And the new generation of the CEOs and the promoters, they have a vision. It's not entirely restrictive to the boundaries of one country. Making breakthroughs, so that Tata's buying a Jaguar Land Rover. It has turned profitable. Birla's buying Novalis. And so I am very, very impressed and optimistic. I have the advantage of comparing the executives from many countries at the same time. Right. So I can say what I'm saying.
Indeed so, absolutely. And which takes me to the point that if the current set of people, or promoters, or family businesses, have managed to take their companies global, whether it's the Tatas or Birlas, what do you anticipate will be left for the next generation to pick up?
Yeah, the first thing is that when we talk about global, you're not going to be in every country. Number two, to go global for Indian companies, they all have to select their bets, which country, which segments. It's a journey. We are not covering everything yet. Long way to go. So at least 4 or 5 generations from now, we'll have plenty to do. What are they? Geographical coverage where appropriate, innovation, creating new markets. We have plenty of room to go.
When you give the credit to Indian leaders, do you look at them as people who are better executors or better strategists?
Yeah. Now this is a question in many countries, not just in India. In most situations, 80% of the game is execution. 20% of the game is a strategy. You do need a good strategy. But a good strategy is not very good if you don't execute well. And the second thing, if you have a lousy strategy, if you're good in execution and discover very quickly how lousy the strategy is, our people operationally are excellent. Promoters using outside people as well are able to design good strategies. Our professional people rising to it. But, and when I use the word but, we should not compare our people with other countries because they have the same issue. Most of the people come there through the operational side. But there are times when people come from consulting and become high-level executives, they have strategic skills, but a good number of those don't have execution skills. Right. So here what I'm pleased to see is that our promoters and our CEOs are seeking help when they need. They're willing to recruit the best talent. Mr. Birla recruited Phil Martin's best talent. Mr. Tata recruited the CEO for the automobile business. Right. It came from originally BMW and then Opel. So India is very open, so we're going to get the best talent. Once you have the best talent, it goes. Because I've always said And my learning is from practitioners. People before strategy.
Okay, people before strategy. Let's talk about the best talent. And if that is really the entire story of merit when it comes to selection, we are discussing this at a time when there are plenty of succession plans that are open here in India, whether it's Infosys or the Tatas. How challenging do you think the task is going to be for them, especially when they debate, should we have somebody from within or someone from outside?
Yeah, I think there's a big misconception, not just in India or in America. Succession, something that I deal with it almost every week. And that is, first part of succession is not just the CEO succession. Succession has to be used as a vehicle to develop talent. It has to be an ongoing thing. Not just CEO, his or her team, second generation, third generation. And what is the input of talent at the entry level all the way. So there are a number of companies in India who do a very good job of it. So that's first item. The second item is there is no such thing as a universal CEO. There may be one in 100 million somewhere, but that's not the purpose. So the succession skill at the CEO level is to find the right fit in the person's talent and what the board thinks are the non-negotiable criteria.
Right.
And the criteria, there are 5 buckets: personality, skills, judgment, relationships, and the drive to execute, get things done. You're not going to have a perfect human being in all the 5. So in this part, to select CEOs in each of these companies, you have to see what are your 3 or 4 absolutely necessary specific criteria.
Do you think that the Tata Group would ever be the same without the drive that Ratan Tata has displayed over the last 1.5 decades?
Yeah, let me just mention one more thing, then I'll respond to your question. And that is, you look at HP right now, and they are very explicit in their criteria that the person has to transform the company into software, services, and networking. And therefore, a person coming from hardware is not going to fit. So that determines then what comes from inside or outside. Coming to Mr. Tata, one of the things I learned in life, there will be no second Mr. Tata. There will be no Mr. Kumar Banglam second. There will be no Jack Welch coming in. There will be no Steve Jobs in Apple. Different times, different people. What we don't know is somebody coming in who could be better. So I remember in the case of General Electric, 1981, the outgoing CEO, Reg Jones, was one of the most celebrated, most respected CEO. And most people will agree with me that he was fantastic for his times. But then comes Jack Welch for 19 plus years. And most people will say in his tenure did a fantastic job.
Right.
So there is no reason to believe that we won't have a very nice fit in the next person to what the challenges are.
It's very interesting that you mentioned that, because today some of the questions that are being raised, it just so happens it's in the context of the Tatas, because that's the open plan right now, is it very important that the person who succeeds Mr. Tata should be a Tata?
Well, I think if I am allowed to have criteria, then I'll tell you. Criteria number 1, in my view, and again it's a personal view,
Yes.
this set of companies have values that are not matched any other company in the world. I wrote the foreword for the book, so I got to know the values. So the first criteria is the person who believes in these values, practices those values, and then carry out the values for the whole group in the future. That's first criteria. Now, second criteria is that Mr. Tata has taken this company more global than the predecessors.
Right.
And this globalization has just begun. And the company is very clear that it must have presence and linkage with community, not just blind shareholder value. So somebody has to be able to guide and think about the future, to be able to win globally at the same time, keep the community.
Because you're going to have to be Indian.
Doesn't have to be Indian, but the values will differentiate that. Having lived in Latin America, United States, Australia, these values of Tata's are very different from the others. They are Indian values. So we need to have somebody who nurtures, understands those values. And if there's somebody from outside has it, she should be considered. And then you have other criteria of selecting people, building the social system inside, and resource allocation. And so here, without saying whether it's Indian, non-Indian, Tata, not Tata, the criteria that I would call non-negotiable are very clear. Now we have to find human beings who come close to it.
And which hasn't been quite easy, as we all know.
Well, I'm very clear. If the values criteria is not matched, we will have a great time.
But since you do advise so many technology companies, especially back in America, what do you think of Infosys? I mean, Nandan, Lekani and Narayan Murthy were really the mascots of the company. And Mr. Murthy says, it's time for me to hang up my boots. Nandan has already chosen public life. And that leaves with very few iconic figures. Not to say that everyone who's there is doing fantastic work.
They became iconic afterwards. Nobody heard of them. So we have to find people who do the right things, building a company, building people's strength in the company, positioning the company for the future. And when they deliver results, they get recognized. But we're not looking for somebody who's iconic without knowing what's happening.
Do you have a personal view as an individual? Sometimes you might just think out of the box about this, about who potentially, according to you, could take charge from Mr. Tata or from Mr. Murthy?
No, I have no clue. Americans here I do, because I work with these companies and I see what the population is. I don't have any clue here.
Great. On that note, we're going to slip into a short break, but when we come back, we're going to have two young businesswomen join us to talk to Ram Charan about the story ahead when it comes to young leadership becoming mature leadership. Stay right there. Question almost all marketers are grappling with today. This week, brand equity does the math and clears the confusion. Only on ETNOW.
Brought to you by Veligare Broking, India's leading broking network. Mahindra Stalio, Jaan hai, Shaan hai aur Itminan bhi. Himalayan, live natural.
एक्वागार्ड को सब कहते हैं पानी का डॉक्टर। पानी कैसा भी हो, एक्वागार्ड को सब कुछ पता है। एक्वागार्ड टोटल
पानी का डॉक्टर।
कॉल 3988333333।
I always believe in bottom-up stock picking. When you are buying stocks, you will understand that you are buying businesses. Irrespective of where the indices are going, you will definitely have good opportunities coming your way.
Parag Parekh decodes the markets on Market Makers only on ETNOW.
Welcome back to this special show. We've got the renowned corporate coach, and of course a very well-known speaker on leadership, Ram Charan, with us. And we've also got two young businesswomen who are joining us, Rakhi Kapoor of Yes Bank and Devita Saraf of View Technologies. Thank you for being with us. And I think it would make a great, interesting conversation for us to know, what do you young ladies have to ask Dr. Ram Charan?
Okay, so Indian companies, especially small and mid-sized Indian companies these days, are competing with large Indian companies and multinational corporations, who of course have got more high-end talent. How can an Indian mid-sized company invest and mentor in their teams and their employees to make them world-class, even if they have not had that kind of global exposure?
I want to mention to you three things to take to heart, because I get to see this in Colombia, South America, and Brazil, and the United States, and here. The first part is, be sure that whatever you are offering is differentiated from the large companies. do not compete head on. They have the scale advantage. So either you are nimble, or you have speed, or you have a segment that is different,